Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights.
I want to acknowledge that I am recording on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and that Jenna is recording on the land of the Darug people and Gundungurra people, and Holly is recording on the land of the Ngunnawal people. I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that this always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded, never will be ceded, and the traditional custodians of the land having ongoing connection with the lands and waters and their culture, and the genocide is ongoing.
Thank you so much, Despo Debbie, for acknowledging country for us today. So Despo is joining us for this episode, and if that sounds like a bit of an odd name, that is because Despo is a member of Debbie Doesn't Do It For Free, which is an Australian art and performance sex worker collective.
That's right.
How's this for an intro? Despo is a First Nations non-binary queer whore. In terms of sex work, they have worked in porn, stripping, peep shows, camming and full-service sex work in parlours, privately and on the streets. They are also an accomplished performer, rapper and artist, having exhibited their artwork in the Sex Workers Pop-Up Art Festival in New York in 2020. Whew,
You've done it all.
Yeah, you have. But not for free.
Thank you.
No, exactly.
Absolutely not.
Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really exciting to be on the show.
Nice. Well, we're going to get stuck into it. So we always ask this question. I don't know if it's boring for other people, but we love it.
I love it.
We're suckers for the origin story here at Somebody You Love. So can you tell us what got you started in the industry and sort of how you've come to be where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. So basically it was kind of accidentally stumbling into the industry. I was sort of just finishing high school. I really wanted to go on schoolies and also escape my super homophobic family. And so one of those little pull-off ads for like artist models that I assumed was life modeling and then was very much not that, but my exhibitionist streak was like, oh, fuck yeah, let's go for it. I kind of started out doing porn, like local sort of porn, and then moved into stripping, then moved into camming with a partner, and then was kind of like, oh, you know what, I can actually do elements of this that I like the exhibitionist-y kind of side of it, but also incorporate a lot more laziness most of the time in peeps. And then, realised that extras kind of give you a lot more, and then was like, fuck, well, if extras give you a lot more, I'm sure full service does too. And kind of got on my way into full service work, and ta-da.
Ken, I wonder if, I didn't know what peeps were years ago. Can you explain what peep shows are?
Oh, peep shows are great. I feel like they're kind of becoming more few and far between. A lot of the places that had peeps, like Club X's and stuff like that, a lot of them are kind of getting rid of them, sadly, and replacing them with just like porn cinemas or like, online kind of booths and stuff. But peeps are... I feel like peeps are such a good element of sex work because you don't have to do anything when you're not on. It's like you don't have to talk to the clients. You don't have to you don't have to speak to anybody. You can just kind of lie there, relaxing, listening to your music. And then when the client comes so you're kind of like in a little booth, in like a little glass room or whatever, and there's a bunch of pay-per-minute view booths all around you. And then when someone puts their couple of dollars in or whatever, and you make half of everything that goes in, you start, putting on a bit of a show, playing with yourself, that kind of thing. And basically in between though, you can literally just be chilling there. I love it. It was such a good vibe for me.
It has always appealed to me. I've never tried it, and I've always thought, I don't know, just being in this box, I think because I've got the exhibitionist streak as well, being in this little box and then just being like revealed and then having to put on a show, and like it really appeals to me. Yeah,
it's really fun. I don't know. And also, there's just such an amazing history around it as well. Like in the States, I know Lusty Lady was one of the first kind of sex work premises to be collectivized and run by workers for workers. Up in Sydney, they used to be a much more, not obviously completely collectively run, but much more collectively managed peeps up there in George Street, where workers kind of had a lot more autonomy and with like, you know, being put on, having each other's back, demanding that like they're not going to do anything for less than $5, because a lot of the time you'll have people being really cheap, putting in a coin, you know, getting themselves to a certain point, and you're like, God damn it.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, and also like I know in Europe there used to be these really amazing ones where you're kind of like in this really luxurious fancy box, like from Victorian ages. Yes. So there's just such a fucking cool history around it. I really loved being part of that.
Yeah, I want to be in a box. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, there is something really appealing about doing stripping in a way where you're not standing on a stage in front of audience that haven't paid you anything. That everyone who gets to see anything has contributed in some way. That's really cool. It's very intimate as well. It's sort of one-on-one, isn't it? Like, well, it's not because they've got, but you know, it's not a big room
Often
of people.
It is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
fully.
So cool.
And they also cut like a lot of the time, unless you get a big group of people coming in, they all know each other in the booths. It's sort of like there isn't the performativity of maybe being in an intro room where people are being really broy, or, you know, a bunch of lads going to the strip club and kind of, you know, sort of egging each other on with this like toxic behavior or anything. It's sort of like it's me and you and you and me and you and me, and y'all don't know the experience that you're all each having. So,
wow.
really
Okay, hold on. That's just blown my mind. So you're there, but there would be multiple different people viewing you.
From different angles.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not really a box, it's like a hexagon. Like it's
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't really know the shape of it, but yeah, pretty much. And
that's
they're all like
cool.
boop, 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 boop around.
Wow. And so they're all having a one-on-one experience with you, but you're having this experience with multiple people. That sounds so cool. I've got to get onto this.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, right. Okay, and then, sorry, you touched on, like, the collective structure kind of thing. We haven't talked about that really on the show. We've touched a little bit about how we feel about brothel management and stuff like that. Yeah. Can you share with us what the difference is when it's more of a collective structure?
Yeah, I mean, I only had the pleasure of working at the George Street Club X one time, and I just noticed that obviously it's still owned by Club X. It's still, there's a higher manager sort of person looking over it, but the day-to-day stuff was run by the other workers. So you'd be able to change shifts with people. You'd be able to, they were able to kind of collectively bargain to have people, like, people had to put in a minimum amount before you sort of were asked to do any performance kind of stuff. That was really cool. But yeah, that wasn't obviously completely collectivized.
Sure.
Sex worker owned, you know, by workers, for workers kind of space. But from my understanding, that's something that a lot of people are really hoping to be able to do. I know in Victoria, once sex work's decriminalised here, I've been involved in quite a few of the discussions and negotiations and consultations with government and that sort of thing. And a lot of the feedback that we've been getting from a lot of sex workers in Victoria is that would be the dream. Because, brothel managers and establishment managers are wanting to take 50% of your income and also have a lot of control over the day-to-day kind of stuff that happens in our workplace, whether that's fining people for ridiculous reasons like having a tear in your stockings, whether that's putting pressure on people to see clients that they're not comfortable with, because the establishment managers they have their bottom line as the primary focus a lot of the time. Not to say every establishment manager. I have known some really lovely, you know, house mums and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the people who are benefiting from 50% of your income do have a vested interest in their bottom dollar at the end of the day. So, when that's sort of taken away and it's a collectivized workplace, that's when workers' rights can really be in the forefront, and safety and all of that stuff can be in the forefront of the day-to-day running instead of just money.
I feel like now is the time as well, because the brothels are struggling at the moment in this post-COVID or, you know, COVID world. Fully. And I feel like now's the time. Let's get in there and fuck it up.
Absolutely. And, you know, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, you know, the bigger end of it with like an entire brothel that's collectively owned. a lot of the time people are already doing this on the down low illegally with the two-tier system we have here at the moment. And that can look like two workers, you know, working together from one of their spaces or hiring an Airbnb together and working as, okay, you have a job, I'll answer your admin sort of stuff and be your lookout person, be your security person, and vice versa. So this kind of collective management of sex work is already kind of happening.
Yeah.
Just not super legally. Yeah.
Hopefully we continue to see that change.
Absolutely.
There seems to be a lot of performers and creatives in the sex industry. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think there's probably two reasons for that. I think that people that are creative often sort of have a more subversive view of the world and a bit more open to, I guess, different ways of viewing things and breaking down societal norms and expectations and that kind of stuff. And I think sex work requires a lot of that because obviously we've all been socialised in this world in a really most of us have been socialised in a really whorephobic way to view sex work as something that's deviant, that's something that makes you less than. And obviously none of that is true. But yeah, I think a lot of creative people and a lot of political people that then express their politics through creativity are drawn to kind of unpack some of that. Obviously, that's not true for all of them. I've come across a lot of cooked artistic people. But yeah, I think the other side of it is freedom of time. Like a lot of us aren't making enough money to get by on from our creative output, whether that's music, whether that's art, whether that's whatever it is, some kind of performance stuff. And this is a job that is so flexible and that you can be like, hey, I'm actually going to go into my studio and I'm going to make my little, ceramics all day long. And then instead of having to fit in, an entire full-time working week to support myself, then I can just go to the brothel, at night and be able to come back and work on my creative practice in the day. Or, I want to tour this album and while I'm touring, I can do some jobs, while I'm touring Australia or whatever it is. So I think sex work is something really good that's good at fitting around whatever your kind of things that you want to get done are. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, that's, I used to work in a creative field and now I do that as a hobby, essentially. And sex work allows me to do that. And it's fucking amazing. And I don't feel that pressure of, if that doesn't make me much money, that's okay. Because I've got this other thing that, as you said, is flexible and I can just make it all work. And that's bloody amazing. Like, if you can, then why wouldn't you? It's great.
For sure, yeah.
So, Despo, tell us, who are the Debbies? What is Debbie Doesn't Do It for Free?
So Debbie Doesn't Do It for Free, we're a sex worker artist collective that was founded in 2002. The first sort of thing that it was founded for was an exhibition called Art Rage in Perth, where a lot of the Debbies at the time were from and where they lived. And it's sort of really spread. Everybody has a Debbie name, which is a pseudonym that's a cheeky homage to the 70s porno Debbie Does Dallas. For example, I'm Despo Debbie, my partner's Dirt Debbie, there's Belly Debbie, there's Difficult Debbie, there's so many Debbies.
Some of the names themselves are really amusing.
There's brilliant names. Debauched Debbie, there's, oh my God, if I could only remember all of the Debbies, there's so many. Deep Dish Debbie, they're great. And yeah, I guess we all sort of took on pseudonyms because the nature of what we're talking about is really stigmatized. We're all talking about aspects of our sex work, aspects of, society and its whorephobic views towards sex work as a whole. And it just enables us to be able to kind of speak to peers and non-peers with the relative security, relative safety of having this pseudonym. For myself, I do art under a different name as well. I perform under a different name as well. And it just kind of enables me to keep the two separate.
And then you have a separate sex work name as well.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yeah.
So you have these very distinct separate areas.
Absolutely, yeah. Got all the little compartmentalized identities down, yes, as many of us do.
Yep.
And yeah, it's kind of spread all over Australia. We've been involved in so many incredible exhibitions, incredible films, all that sort of stuff. We have been part of a lot of different festivals like Feast in South Australia, We had exhibitions at Victoria's festivals of sex work when they were still happening. We had a very popular stall called Ask a Sex Worker at the International AIDS Conference in 2014. We had an amazing exhibition where we also sort of had a durational performance where sex worker artists were constantly occupying a gallery's window in Darlinghurst, performing for the duration of the exhibition to celebrate 20 years of decriminalisation in New South Wales, and also show solidarity because that used to be a red light district
at
in
the
Sydney.
Tap Gallery, is it?
Yeah. So that was a really fun one. And also a lot of our stuff has obviously had to evolve during COVID. Like for so many of us, work has evolved, and creativity has evolved because of the nature of what's been happening for everybody. So yeah, since COVID, we've been more so focusing on putting on storytelling events, which have been really great. The names have had to keep evolving thanks to getting the boot from community standards. So it started out as Glory Hall. It's currently called the Intro Room. And yeah, it's sort of events that we tell stories about our lives. They can be funny, they can be poignant, they can be really hard-hitting. And one of those was actually put on with the Emerging Writers Festival, which was really cool to kind of see what we do, you know, with this sort of very normie kind of festival, showcasing it and kind of getting our messages out there to a broader audience, that was really rad to be part of.
Yeah. I think that the sort of being forced online thing, like I think one of the silver linings of that is like my first experience, I had heard of the Debbies a few years ago, but my first experience actually like attending an event or something that had been put on, and then I got to participate in one of them myself as well, was the Intro Room, and which I think it was, the Glory Hole at that time, which is a way better name, but, you know.
Such a better name.
Instagram hates us, so here we are. But that I may not have been able to be exposed to that had it not been an online thing. So hopefully there's obviously COVID has been shit for the arts and for the sex industry.
Yes.
And so your whole life basically. But but I think that one of the positives is hopefully that it has opened it up to a little bit of a broader audience. And generally I think unless otherwise specified, those events are open for non-sex workers, for allies to attend as well. Is that right?
Yeah. They've all been sort of mixed, peer and non-peer, and also to raise money for the Sex Worker Mutual Aid Fund, which has been helping a lot of vulnerable sex workers who've been doing it really tough during COVID because we don't have another safety net a lot of the time. So being good to do some.
It is a lot of people's safety net, isn't it? Really?
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you sort of was able to get involved as well. It's so rad.
I do want to do more as well, but it's
for sure.
It is interesting to me because I have those two worlds as well of the sex work and the arts, and then putting them together is sort of newish to me, and that's where I sort of go, oh, okay, hold on, I've got to, connecting the two is something I'm still working on, I guess.
Totally, yeah.
Despo, why is it so important for sex workers to be involved in the work that is created about us?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I think we are a community that are talked about so much. Talking about us is something that titillates civilians out there in the world. And we are also a community that there's so many myths about us, so many misconceptions about what we do, who we are, and what our motivations are and all that kind of thing. And yeah, I think a really important phrase that's come out of the sex worker movement is nothing about us without us. And that's because so many groups speak on our behalf and claim to represent our interests, and they really harm us with their rhetoric and what they lobby government for. And we're often sort of put into this dichotomy where we're either seen as victims who can't speak, or if we are speaking out, then we're not the right kind of sex worker. We're the pimp lobby, whatever the fuck that is. Or we're, you're way too privileged to be speaking out as a sex worker, whatever it is. I really enjoy the fact that on your podcast, you both speak to that and say, we can't speak on someone else's behalf, we're speaking on our own behalf. I think that's really important, but your experiences are still valid. And, I think just to say that only the most marginalised sex workers who are I mean, myself, I've always been a survival sex worker, sex work.
I am sex work.
I am sex work. It's fine. You heard my origin story. No. But yeah, like, we're basically seen as either you don't have a voice, and if you do have a voice, then you're not the right kind of voice.
But that's it. It's silencing no matter what, right? And I think that,
Absolutely.
Holly and I have talked about that a lot. And as you've picked up, like, we acknowledge we have huge amounts of privilege in this, in the sex industry and in the world in general. And but it's still important for us to speak. And
sure.
it's so easy for the antis to just go, well, you have a lot of privilege, so you're not representative, so you can't speak. And you don't have enough privilege, so you're a victim and you don't get to speak. So either way, we're fucked, right? So we've all just got to keep speaking up.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's really important to constantly be disrupting the narratives that people have around us, because, you know, there's so many elements of what we do that people don't fully understand, and there's so many stigmas that people bring to our work and what we do. Like, for example, people don't realize that, like, the whole thing of, like, oh, sex work is going to be on every street. Oh, like, think of the children. But, like, a huge majority of sex workers are parents, are mothers. I think I saw a statistic that was something like over 90% of sex workers in the world are mothers.
Wow.
It's like freaking, yeah. So when people are, like, out here, like, oh, the children, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of children that we're out here supporting.
Yeah.
So
that's always my thing. I'm like, which children are you worried about? Because it doesn't seem like you're worried about the children of sex workers.
No.
Because if you take their income away, how the fuck are they going to feed those children? Like,
precisely. Yeah. And just so many other elements. I mean, I don't think anybody that's in the sex industry has ever thought that the media that out here that we're seeing, the majority of mainstream media, is representative of our lives. I mean, we're constantly either shown as a stereotype of a dead sex worker in a bin, or the kind of femme fatale who's going to steal your man, or, you know, the pretty woman character that's just waiting to be rescued. I mean, you know, at the moment, I think there is some good representations of sex work that are out there, but it's when we've been involved either completely making the media ourselves, or we've been involved in the consultation, or at some point, you know, during it, to be able to be like, hey, we want to see fully fleshed characters that are full people in the world, because that's what we all are. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we did touch on this a little bit. And I think a lot of people, when I speak to a lot of my friends, they expect that the arts world is super liberal and really sex positive and everyone's really chill and all that. And there is a bit of that. But from my personal experience, I actually found that there is quite a bit of whorephobia in the arts.
Yeah.
And now we touched on you keeping your sex work and your art quite separate in a lot of ways. The Debbies adopt Debbie names. So do you have a fear about those worlds crossing over? Is that something that you are quite protective of?
I mean, for me, it's less of a thing of giving a shit about the arts world or the music world or whatever and how they perceive me. It's more about my family. Yeah, but I think that that's definitely true. There is a lot of whorephobia out there in the arts. I mean, there's a lot of art people that are wanting to speak on our behalf, but are then, like, disgusted to find us in their spaces and amongst them. And so, yeah, I know a lot of people in the arts and in the music industry that also keep their stuff very separate and very apart. But yeah, I think if my family situation was a bit different, it's not something that I'd be super bothered about. But I do have to play it a bit safe with my
So you're not
family.
out at all to your family?
I've been outed to one part of my family, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's awful.
Yeah, it's quite trash.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other side, I don't think would deal with it super well either. So I'm just kind of in damage control mode.
God,
yeah,
that's tough. It's hard to live like that.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Yeah, and do you find it difficult juggling all your different hats? As you said, so many of us have these different personas and stuff. Is that tough?
I think it's something I'm extremely used to. I mean, I've been doing it since I was very, very young. Growing up in a really homophobic family, I constantly had all of these webs of lies that I was maintaining, and, like, reinvented my best friend, who was also queer, when my family kind of found out I was in love with her and we were hanging out constantly. And then I went to move in with my grandparents and auntie and uncle. I had to reinvent her as her cousin and had like the whole school, her whole family, everybody in on these like different crisscrossing things. So I feel like, yeah, it's something that is very second nature to me by now. But yeah, it can be difficult. It can be like, for example, I've recently been asked to play a show as my other persona that is a sex work like related fundraiser, and I'm kind of in the thing of like, I feel like it would be really effective for people to know that I'm playing as a member of the community.
Yeah.
But, you know, this could potentially cause issues for me down the track with this other artist persona. So do I just like perform as an ally? And then it's kind of weird. And some people know and some people don't. Yeah. Kind of sometimes ends you up in these weird situations, but you kind of work it out.
And then sometimes I think the flip side of that is allies are sometimes assumed to be undercover sex workers.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is not the case a lot of the time.
One of the Mardi Gras marches was for sex workers and allies, which is it's quite useful to have that so that people don't have to out themselves. But my good friend came with me as an ally, and I'd posted stuff on Facebook and whatever, and we didn't even think about it because I know that they are not a sex worker, and we just know that. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, are they a sex worker?" And I was like, "Oh, no, they're just a supporter, you know." And it doesn't. They don't care. They don't care if people incorrectly think that that's the case. But yeah, sometimes that is an assumption. So I guess I don't know. Yeah, it's. And it does. It seems like it would be really great to mash it all together, you know.
Totally.
But
yeah.
It's all about the future. Hey, like we don't know we make decisions. Sure. Yeah.
It's such a shame that we have to spend so much time worrying about how other people are going to react to who we are. Like, how disappointing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, if stigma wasn't a thing, it wouldn't even need to be a consideration.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's so real and can affect people in such intense ways, you know, with custody, with future jobs, with all kinds of stuff, that it is something we've always got to kind of keep in the back of our heads for a lot of people that aren't out.
Yeah, look, I mean, Holly and I are both pretty bloody out there, as out as you can sort of get. But it's still something, you know, stigma still affects us. And it's so for us to imagine how much, you know, and we've both been not out at times in our lives as well. And I don't think there's the highest class hooker in the world isn't not touched by stigma, you know?
Absolutely.
I think it's,
absolutely.
Gets us all. Do you miss the free and affordable ads and social networks without all of the anti-sex rhetoric?
Assembly 4 is a team of sex workers and technologists from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising and social spaces to the sex working community.
Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their two products, Tryst.link and Switter.at, are refreshing and well-needed changes in both presentation and mission.
And both are free to join and open to all.
You can find both of our profiles on Tryst, and I love how it is so clearly designed by sex workers.
Yep, and I love how straightforward and easy it is to use and how much they clearly support the sex working community.
And also how responsive they are when it comes to feedback and customer service.
Check out their website assembly4.com for the word, not the number, for more info.
So we always whenever we have a guest on, we ask our patrons if they would like to ask any questions. So we have a few that have been submitted by our patrons today.
Yeah.
What does black mean? Is that a term that I, a white person, can use? Black as in B-L-A-K.
So black, from my understanding, is, I guess it comes from blackfella, which is like a kind of Aboriginal English slang term for an Aboriginal person. Yeah, it kind of differentiates from being, you know, African diaspora black or another kind. There's so many different kinds of black out there. So it is kind of like a unique term that situates your blackness within being First Nations from this land. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of all black people, so I don't feel like I can personally give people all the go-ahead to use a term. I know a lot of allies that do use that term. I don't think I've ever kind of... Yeah, I can't think of a time that I've heard people be upset about white people using that term, but, yeah, also I can't speak on behalf of everybody in the community and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, cool. Good to know. Yeah, I think it's one of those tricky ones because so many of the words that we use to describe ourselves have been reclaimed or have come from a slur or something like that. So I guess that's
fully.
where there's always that. I think it's a really valid question. Like, is
Definitely, yeah. I think it's also important to know that it's you should spell it with a capital B. So the same with Indigenous needs to be spelt with a capital I. Aboriginal needs to be spelt with a capital A. Just to sort of show respect. And also, I mean, with Aboriginal and with Indigenous, especially Indigenous, lowercase I Indigenous is used to speak about flora and fauna, and lowercase a Aboriginal is more of an adjective because people that are Aboriginal to an area means they're native to an area.
Yeah.
So there can be Aboriginal First Nations people, from Canada, from America, from all sorts of different areas, but capital A Aboriginal does speak about just Aboriginal people from this land.
Yeah, right. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right.
The
Thank
more
you.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know about capitalizing the B in black.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
That's okay.
Very cool.
No worries.
Okay, so again, we've touched on this a little bit. Big question. Has there been a difference in the reaction of other black people to you being queer and or non-binary and or a sex worker as opposed to the reaction of friends or colleagues, etc., from other cultural backgrounds? Have you seen a difference there?
I feel like I'm not super out in non-sex worker black spaces. I'm quite new to the community. Like, my dad is stolen and I haven't grown up with community. I haven't grown up with culture. So I feel like I'm a lot more, I don't know what the word is. I feel like I'm a lot more cautious when I'm in black spaces of kind of not wanting to rock the boat or something. That's not to say that, black fellas are more whorephobic than anybody else. I know a lot of other First Nations sex workers, but yeah, with non-binary stuff, I mean, a lot of First Nations cultural stuff is very binary. It's very divided into, men's business, women's business, that sort of thing. So I feel like, those spaces, if someone calls me cis or, cis girl or anything like that, I don't correct people because I feel really privileged to be able to kind of be reconnecting with those spaces. And yeah, it's sort of only when I feel that I'm like, known somebody for a really long time or feel really comfortable with them that I do kind of broach that topic. But I know there are a lot of non-binary black fellas, that are out there and are kind of doing that work and carving out that space. There is pre-colonial times, there are trans identities, sister girl, brother boy, not necessarily trans identities, but gender diverse identities, and that have been here for a really long time that, the colonial impact and the genocide of missionaries and Christianity and mission schools and all that kind of stuff has had a huge impact on people being accepted within their communities because those cultural histories have been really disrupted. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that are kind of out there doing that work and carving that space out, and I really respect them for that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's complex. Hey,
it's very complex. Yeah.
Yeah. That must be really full on for you, being able to reconnect to or to connect for the first time, I guess, with that community and your culture and stuff. That would be really special. But
That's a lot in itself.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, you don't want to go launching in with a whole lot of other factors. Yeah.
Fully. Yeah.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
What do people get wrong about Indigenous sex workers?
I think the first thing that people get wrong is that they're going to identify as sex workers. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge thing for outreach. It's a huge thing for, I guess, the sex worker movement, trying to bring more black fellas along with us. Because that's a huge thing. A lot of Indigenous sex workers aren't doing what white sex workers expect sex work to be. A lot of the time it's a lot more informal. They might speak about having a captain. It might be in exchange for a place to stay or a ride.
You
or
might
something
need
like
to
that.
explain what a captain is.
Oh, right. So a captain is basically like a client, but maybe more of like a sugar daddy kind of client. Yeah, sort of thing. Or you might have multiple captains, but I'm going out to get a captain is like, I'm going to go to find a client or, you know, a job or whatever. But yeah, I think it can be a lot more informal, and it just makes it really difficult for non-Indigenous sex workers that are trying to kind of, I don't know, or health workers or anything like that are kind of trying to target First Nations sex worker population, because a lot of the time if you're just putting out, you know, posters being like, oh, you know, we support First Nation sex workers, or putting out a flyer or something saying, you know, if you're a First Nation sex worker, it's really important to get tested, people are going to be like, oh, I'm not a sex worker. So yeah, I think that's a primary thing that can be really important. And
it's interesting, I think, for us, for a lot of us, a lot of white people, like sex work and sex worker are such important terms, and we hold those really dear, and it's really important to us that those terms are used.
For sure.
There's a bit of a conflict there.
Definitely. I think that's a major difference. Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
So the first time I heard the term captain, I assumed that was more like what I would call a pimp, just because of captain, like it sounds like a ranking thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I was like, make sure we say what that is.
Yeah, no.
Is this a
client.
dumb question? Do you know where that comes? Like, why captain? Is there a...
I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I actually hadn't heard of it either until I was working on a black sex worker advisory group, and was speaking to other black sex workers from up north and from more like remote communities, because it's not a term I've come across.
Well, and that's the other thing too, it's not like one homogenous group, right?
No,
so there may
not
be
at
different
all.
language used around different places. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I think another difference is the fact that we are kind of facing multiple areas of oppression, multiple areas of stigma, marginalization, and the impact of racism in the sex industry is actually so full on. I mean, one thing that I think might be surprising to non-Indigenous sex workers is the fact that most Indigenous sex workers that I know don't identify themselves as Indigenous in their sex work. And I know that's the same for me. I know that's the same for a whole bunch of First Nations sex workers that I've spoken to. And on Decolonized Sex Work, there was a really good, that's an Instagram page run by black sex workers and
we'll
speaking
link
about
that.
our issues. Yeah, there was a really good discussion about this exact topic. And like for myself, I advertise as Caribbean, which is actually just a personal joke with me and myself, because I'm so fucking sick of people being like, oh, has anyone ever told you look like Rihanna? And I'm like, yep, I'm actually from the same town. So I looked up where she was from. I looked up like a last name from there as well. And I'm like, yep, that's my name.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So that was kind of my own personal little just having fun thing. But yeah, I mean, the reality is if you advertise, I'm not sure, I think it can be a little bit different in, I guess, communities up north and where there's a larger Aboriginal population. But down here in I've never seen an ad of someone saying that they're Aboriginal, because we're sort of both hypersexualized and seen as not desirable, sort of in the same space. We're seen as like really sexually available, like the whole idea of a hoe, that kind of thing, but then also not fetishized as a racial identity too. So it's kind of find yourself in this really weird position where it's like, oh, do I stay true to myself and my community and just not get any fucking bookings, or do I sort of fetishize myself in a different way and sort of just lean into the whole like fucking exotic shit and push
Which
myself
is a whole
into
other
something else.
issue of its own. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's a position that a lot of black sex workers find themselves in. And yeah, we're out here saying we're Caribbean, we're out here saying we're Italian, all kinds of different identities, because that is what sells more, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you got to pay the rent. Like that's at the end of the day, it's your job, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah. That's not something I'd thought about before. So
yeah, it's pretty cooked. And like, I don't think it's reflective of a lack of pride in, you know, in my identity or in any of our identities as, you know, First Nations people. It's just the impact of colonialization and genocide. on a community. Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yep.
Yeah, look, I think that's a misconception for a lot of that stuff, like a lot of sex workers who are face in, who don't, show their face in their advertising, for people who are trans or who are gender diverse and who don't talk about that in their advertising, or who do use slurs and all that sort of thing. So much of that can be taken as a lack of pride or as a shame or as something like that. And it unfortunately, the lack of pride or the shame or whatever is not coming from that individual.
No.
And it's certainly not coming from those of us who are allies and in the community. But that is the stigma of the world that we live in. That's the reality of it. And it's tough. It's hard to fight that. And we can't expect anyone to kind of take that on as their battle to win while they don't make any money.
Definitely.
What's the fucking point of that?
Exactly. And also even just getting your foot in the door, even beyond the clients. I mean, the Peeps place I used to work at, I witnessed the owner or the manager or whatever the hell he was literally said to me when another First Nations woman came in to try out, he was like, oh, never going to hire an Aboriginal. They're fucking dogs. And I just had to sit there being like, wow, and it was just so disgusting and so disrespectful, and I kind of was like, that's really fucked, and just walked off. But it's like that's the kind of attitude we're also facing from managers, from the people that are the gatekeepers to the industry. So it's really cooked.
I only went toured Darwin once, and obviously there is a higher population of Indigenous people in Darwin. But my experience with that was that most of my clients, who were mostly white, were insanely racist, and I was just hearing a lot of stuff that I'm not used to hearing where I live, and I just sort of had to go, well, I don't live here, and you just whatever. And I've just had this thought that masquerading as being not black or not Aboriginal, I mean, you're probably hearing that shit too.
Yeah, I hear a lot of
really
shit and puts you in this fucked position. Yeah, and also around trans people too. I mean, I'm non-binary and you kind of hear people say these fucked things, about trans people, about queer people, and I'm masquerading as a, non-Indigenous, cis, straight woman and having to be like, fuck.
Yeah, awful.
Really
I mean, we hear that shit too, but it just never kind of really clicked to me that you're going to be hearing that. And that's,
fully. Yeah, it's really dark.
In a space where you're naked, it's very
pretty
intimate.
vulnerable.
Yeah. Ooh, not nice. Well, changing the topic to something far less dark, maybe. Now, this question is entirely my fault because I told our patrons that the last time you and I spoke, we were bonding over trashy reality show.
Yeah.
Trashy reality TV. So the question is, which reality show do you feel the least guilty about indulging in?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably watching Brooke's season of The Bachelorette, just because it was so good. I'm not ashamed to say I had a little cry at the first episode when they did a welcome to country ceremony for her, and it was just like it was so heartwarming to see a diverse range of people and a diverse range of attractions, and to have this out proud black pan woman sort of getting them to kind of change the formula to be a bit more by her rules. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It's still reality TV, and they did kind of break it down into this weird binary thing of like, ooh, boy, girl, boys versus girls, like, which I feel like would have felt really weird as a pan person, kind of being like, oh, I'm trying to disrupt this stuff, and they're still keeping it super binary. And I know she's dated a non-binary person in the past as well, so interesting. But that
baby
definitely,
steps, I guess.
Oh, it warmed my heart. Yeah, so exciting to see that as the first thing in the whole Bachelorette franchise. Yeah, that was real cute.
Nice.
But now they've split, and David posted on Instagram and humiliated her. Did you see that?
I did
what?
not.
No,
Oh my God.
like a few days ago,
That's
like
so
they
fucked.
obviously split up like a few days ago, and
Oh my God.
they discussed like I guess that she was going to announce it when they were ready, or like let everything
Yeah.
settle, and he just like got on there and was like, "Nah, I'm single now," sort of thing, and she was like,
Oh
"What?
my-
Could you
that
not even
little
give me?
shit.
Could you not even give me the respect of like, yeah?" So
Becky.
she's pretty fucking crushed. So it's not been a good.
That's
time.
awful.
And he's pretty despised at the moment. I'm sure you can imagine.
I mean, I never liked him.
Yeah,
But
wasn't my
That's
favourite.
I mean, his name's David.
Oh, well, that's.
I don't know anything about these people,
I
but
mean, he comes from. His family's European of some, Middle Eastern or something.
Oh,
so yeah, I
right.
think that's a David might be.
Persian?
Yeah, they get
Yeah.
Persian, or something. Yeah, something like that. But
oh, okay. I love Persian
Yeah,
people. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. We'll forgive. We'll
can
forgive
stay.
him.
Not him,
Yeah,
not David.
no. So she's pretty crushed. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fucked.
I
I
guess.
swear she should have chosen Ryan. He was like the perfect level of like, had a bit of ambition, but still that like puppy dog kind of adorable vibe. Oh,
I think the women.
Right.
I think the women were better, but nah.
I was totally rooting for Holly
Yeah.
until she was like, actually, don't think I'd move for you and I don't want kids.
What
I
was the
like,
whole point on?
Holly, why didn't we discuss this in the beginning?
Anyway, yes, I'm with you.
Heartbreaking. Oh well.
I think you two should have a spin-off podcast where you
Yes.
talk about The Bachelor.
Just tear things to shreds.
Holly, do you have what's your reality show that you feel least guilty about?
I feel guilty about all reality TV I watch. It's pure garbage, and the stuff that I tend to watch is the most vapid. It's Kardashians. It's what was the best one I ever watched, which is the worst one as well. Is I Want to Marry Harry. Did you ever see that? They had like a Prince Harry.
Oh my
lookalike.
god, it wasn't really
It
Harry.
wasn't, and all the girls like apparently believed. I don't think they did believe it, but that
was fucked.
yeah, it was so dumb that it was.
Did they
actually
meet
good.
him?
Yeah,
How did they-
Yeah, he was like an
They just had
impersonator.
this like redhead in a castle.
It was gripping. It was actually. It's still on YouTube. You can
was
find it if you look
amazing.
at. All the episodes
It's
are up
pretty
there.
good.
It's
Oh my god, I'm gonna go watch
it's
it.
really
That sounds
trash.
amazing.
It's pure trash.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my god, actually, can I change my answer? I just realized that this is a reality TV show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Dragula.
No.
But it is
Oh,
just
yes.
Oh, that's very
Yeah.
Jenna.
oh
Zell.
my god.
It is very mean.
Yeah.
I
It's
haven't seen all
incredible.
of it. I've been
Obsessed. Yeah, it's like everything that Drag Race wishes it was. It's like Drag
Yeah.
Race taken to the nth degree of like subversive queerness meets Fear Factor. Oh, it's just the dream. It's the queerest fucking shit. I don't understand how it made it to TV. I'm like, y'all are just out here allowing us to be this freaky. I love it.
It is, and that I know I need to wait. Yeah, I need to sit
Sounds
down
good.
and do a proper watch because I'm a Drag Race like
Yeah. What's yours,
nut.
Jenna? What's your
Yeah.
your least shameful?
Well, probably Drag Race would be, but there's a lot of shame. There's a lot
There's
of
a
shit
lot of
that-
guilt.
There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of things that should not have happened that have happened.
Yeah.
There's 40,000 million seasons that probably shouldn't have happened, but
Probably not.
I fucking love it. So
Yeah, it's very
but I know
addictive.
I need to watch Dragula.
Oh my god.
I know that
it's
I do need to.
life-changingly good.
Okay. I watched the first season on YouTube, but I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah,
like
yeah.
a really shitty rip or something.
Yeah.
Like I need to go in. Yeah. Okay.
Season 2
All right.
is on what's it called? Is on Netflix, and then the rest
Oh,
is on
is it?
Shudder. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. That's okay.
So
All right.
good.
Doing it.
Get into
That's
it.
my New Year's resolution.
yeah.
Okay, so we have this segment on the show called Shit People Say. It's basically where we tell a story about a time that somebody said something ridiculous about sex work. Basically, it could be a client, it could be a civilian, it could be a story, it could be messages you've received, whatever. So I know we have talked about some shit that people have said to you that we've kind of covered already, but do you have anything for us today?
I don't know. I guess they're just like, oh, okay, yes, I've got one. So
Legend.
when I used to work on the street in St. Kilda, I had this fucking infuriating Christian person come up to our corner, and I was working there with my double partner, and she gave us this fucked little handout thing that was this I'll pray for you. I don't know, it was just so cooked. It was this little Christian scripture thing about even the worst of sinners, if you repent, you can be saved by the Lord or something. And she just kind of was like, oh, sorry, I just had something really important to tell you girls. And like, neither of us are girls. We're like, yes. And then she's like, I just wanted to give you this. I'll pray for you, and walked away. And we were both just like, yeah, it was really
So
bad.
they had gone to the effort of writing up like a little pamphlet to give out specifically to sinners that they come across.
On coloured paper too, like not even fucking white paper. Like she'd spent the extra 30 cents
Like
or
she
whatever.
went to Officeworks.
Went to Office, like that was a tip to Officeworks. So fucked. I couldn't believe it. And like, I remember we're just too shocked to say anything, and she walked away. And then we were coming up with all these brilliant things to say afterwards, and we were like walking up and down, hunting her down to try and like have our comeback moment. We couldn't find her. It was so annoying.
And she probably went home and was like, I saved 2 girls, 2
Yes!
women today. I've
2
saved
lovely
them.
ladies.
Do you think she specifically was
so bad.
looking for sex workers? Do you think like she knew,
Yes!
that she went today?
I mean, it was like probably like 1 a.m. on
my
like Grey Street, so she was definitely on the hunt.
Like, what were you doing out there, babe, at that time? Like, what are
She's
you...
sitting there watching
And
the
I'm
clock.
like,
She's like, oh,
can
it's 1
you
o'clock. I better
not
catch
be
them.
walking up and down here, stealing my clients, your old bag. Yeah.
That's a cover. There you go. If the cops ever bother you, you just hand them a Christian pamphlet and go, I'm
Exactly.
trying
I'll be
to
like,
save.
I'll pray for you. Yeah.
The shit that people waste their time with.
I know.
She sat down and typed that out. And I,
Yes.
like, fucking
Well, I saw
hell.
someone on my
trash.
Instagram today say that they had somebody come to their door, a Jehovah's Witness, that had handwritten, it's quite a long note, in a metallic pen. I hope you're having a lovely day. Today, Jesus saved the world, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. And they took this to like a bunch of, they must have handwritten all of these long notes. I mean, people are dedicated to God and good for them, but just keep it out of our
Just keep it
away,
in your own
please.
little letterbox.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got one of those ones, like handwritten in the mail, like with a handwritten envelope and everything. I was like, babe, your arthritis is going to be flaring up writing all these. Like, settle,
And
pedal.
the metallic pens, they run out really
They
quickly.
do.
Oh,
Lord.
Yeah.
Going for it.
wow. Okay, well, that definitely ended us on a more fun note. Thank you so much for coming to join us today, Despo. It's been really enjoyable, and I feel like that's the wrong word to use, but I really appreciated how kind of vulnerable you've been.
No worries.
And sharing some of the shitty stuff and some of the funny stuff.
It's been incredibly insightful.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure.
You've shared a lot today that I had no idea about, and this has been really eye-opening for me, and I appreciate you bringing that to us to share. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'd like to thank our wonderful patrons, as always, for supporting us so amazingly. We are terribly grateful. Our new giving somebody is Alice. Our new generous somebody is Greg. Our new very generous somebody is Swagfu. Our even more generous somebodies this week are Timmy, Andrew, Adam Smith, Lachlan, Sub London, Miss Billy, Nora Knightley,
Leslie, Scott Watson, Andrew, our secret admirer, Margaret, Wheezy, Ellen, Liam, Fritz Your Tits, Catherine, Mr. E, and Scott C. And our extremely generous somebodies are Theodore Betts the First Esquire, Josh, Wombat, Nick, Adam Moore, Brino, Sienna Saint, Amanda Valentina, Pete, Andrew, and Aaron. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye!
Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.